Welcome to the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Lampson. If this is your first time listening or your 50th time listening, this is what to expect on this episode. We dive into the concepts of developing your leadership toolbox. Why do you need this? You need this in any situation to help manage, lead, and control, and ultimately win. How do you do that? You can't use the same form of leadership in everything you do. So every episode, we dive into my leadership philosophy. We dive into the story and the background of the person we're talking to. And we also dive into some leadership traits I have accrued throughout the years. And then we also follow it up with a book review at the end. So you're getting a wide range of leadership topics and traits that you can add to your kit. So without further ado, let's go into the recap of this episode. And afterwards, if you love it, like it, share it, follow it, give us some feedback because we're only just getting started. On today's episode, I am joined with my first form brother, Romi. We met in 2021 at my first Summer Smash. We hit it off, found out he was living in Austin. So we met up a couple times when I came back to Texas. But what I love about this episode is, yes, he is not in the military. So I love bringing civilians, air quotes, to talk about leadership that don't have military experience. But what's great about this episode, which you'll find out, is we don't even get into my leadership philosophy until like 40 minutes in. We cover his heroes for the first 30 to 45 minutes straight, because his heroes are people that you can lead from no matter what. And it was great to hear his mindset of why he listens to them, what he has gathered from them, and how he uses them in different aspects of his life, leads me into what we covered. We covered his 4 categories, which is sort of like my leadership philosophy, something that should be driving you towards your overall goal, no matter what you're doing. We cover leadership at the small business world. He is a dance instructor, so we talk about feedback and how he continues to grow his community and his environment at that level. We talk about trust in relationships, leading by example, and my best one and the most favorite one that I'm probably going to steal forever, disciplines equal freedom. So that being said, let's get into this episode. I hope you enjoy it and keep crushing the day. All right, we are live. Everybody, thank you for listening to the intro. I'm super excited. Just like with a majority of podcasters or podcasts you'll hear, is there's always that conversation that starts before the podcast where you're like, man, we have to hit start because we're already talking about great stuff. And that's what we were doing before, and it was fun. So I was like, dude, let's just hit start. Let's go. And so, my man, we'll jump right into it. I want to say just thank you for joining me again. For those that are just catching up, we haven't spoken in, maybe 2-3 years?
Close to almost 3 years now.
That one time in Austin when my wife came down, we did some yoga together.
Yep.
And then I think, the 75 hard, you threw that out there. We got going in there, and that's when I was like, dude, I want to talk to you some more. And so for most people that are listening, one of the reasons I do this podcast is it's also a great time for me just to connect with somebody I haven't spoken to in a long time that I know. And so it's like a phone call too, which is fun for me because even if people don't get anything out of this, we got to talk and catch up for an hour and see how everybody's doing. But yeah, thanks, my man. We'll dive right into the 3 H's, hometown, heroes, and hardship. On to you.
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on the podcast, man. Great to catch up with you. Like you mentioned, we met like almost 3 or 4 years ago. I think the first time we met, I know the first time we met was at Summer Smash with First Forum.
It was a Summer Smash.
Yeah, so that's where we first met. And so the 3 H, well, first off, I'm Romi Sunga. Thanks for having me. My 3 H's, hometown. I am from Los Angeles, California. I live in Sacramento, but I always make sure people know I'm from LA. Heroes. So I have my heroes kind of change depending on the time of the year and my mood. So my current heroes right now, I will say Alex and Layla Hormozi. They're my young professionals, heroes in business as well as hardcore lifestyle. And Andy and Sal Frisella, they're my heroes in building up a big community, helping impact so many people, and just putting things out there. And they really taught me not to be scared to go after my aspirations. And then I also put Jocko up there as another hero of mine, as his podcast and the way he thinks about things helps me stay grounded. So like it's hard for me to be like, can I cuss on here? I won't cuss. Yeah. But I'm the best, whatever, when I'm hearing him interview people who actually have life situations. And I'm like, dude, why am I tripping out over missing the bus or being late to a meeting? Was it really that bad? And so those would be my 5 heroes. And then the last H is hardship. So a little bit about me is that when I was a child, my family did spend time in a shelter for I think between 1 and 1.5 years. So I know how it feels to be in a shelter, Section 8 housing, and separated parents as well. So those, I guess you could say that hardship kind of shaped the way that I am today.
Let's dive into these heroes, man, because you said Alex or how do you say his last name?
Hormozi.
He's the guy that's been dropping all the. So I think I've heard a little bit about. I think I see a lot of his reels, but he also dives really big into researching a lot of the stuff he talks about, right?
He does, yeah. So, and I want to make sure it's Alex and Layla Hormozi, because
Okay,
a
yeah.
lot
When
of
you
people
said
just think about Alex because he's a
that's
big
what,
buff
yeah.
dude, right? And he's a more popular one. And so to me, he's a hero in the sense because he does long form nerdy content with actionable items that we could implement for our business or our goals. And then Layla, she's on the ops side of the business, and she's like, this is how I manage relationships. This is how I think about time management between my staff and myself. And so like if Alex is the big ideas guy, Layla is the operations. And so that's how I look at both of them.
Yeah, that's what I found fascinating about when I heard about Alex and some of the stuff he's done is he really dives into the research of what he wants to talk about. And so that could take months before he even does a podcast. You know, it's heck, even maybe a year or something. If it's something really in depth, he's going to understand it. He's going to learn about it. And then, like you said, the long format is, I think, really where he found his niche in that world where it's scary to talk for a long time and think people are, going to listen or you're going to get the feedback you need in this era of short craziness. You guys are
Yeah.
ridiculous right now.
And I want to also point out, like, because of Alex, it really honed in on my brain, the way I look at things, that, hey, we suck when we're brand new to things. There's no way to expect us to be awesome, right? Out the get. Maybe we got lucky the first time we were good, but after that, it's hard to maintain consistency. And what Alex drilled to me is that you just need a crap load of reps in order to be good. So he talks about his books that he wrote. He's like, I've written 20 versions of this same book. This presentation on this thing I'm giving to you, I've done almost 500 hours invested towards this 1 hour presentation. And when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, oh man, all right, I got booked to speak in front of 400 young professionals later in September for a 5-minute speech right before the keynote. I've never done something like that. And I'm like, okay, how many hours am I planning to put into this? How many times am I going to rehearse my speech, my presentation, so everything rolls off? Can I rehearse it as closely as possible to the actual situation when I do it in real life? And so in those kind of mentalities, I was like, man, if I'm doing a 5-minute speech before, I'd be like, I'll prepare 2 hours and then do maybe a couple rehearsals. Now it's like, oh, I got to put way more.
I love the reps, man. And obviously Andy talks about it as well. And I see it in a lot of things I'm trying to do now where before I just wasn't putting in the reps to get the results. And I thought I was. I think most people think like a week is enough time for reps when it's like months, years. Like we've obviously heard of the 30, 60, 90 concept, right? When it comes to self-development, and you can manipulate it as you need to for time. So I'm in I guess like a challenge right now where I just do a YouTube short and I just do it for 30 days, just like a talk, on something, but it's to help build reps. So there's no crazy, I'm not trying to get a lot out of it. It's just to build reps. And that's just to get used to how am I going to speak on short content really briefly, or do I prep for them? Most of the time I do these after I'm working out where I've been thinking about what I'm going to say, as the juices are flowing. It's hard to know the reps you put in, you have to like triple it, double it, tenfold it to really get proficient at it. How have you learned and adapted with that where you think you're doing enough reps, but you're not? Like that's a big mental block for people.
Yeah, and I'll use my background. So quick background is I'm a co-founder of Dance on the Edge. And what we do is we create Latin dance events for the community. And we also teach it in the private sector, or for corporate gigs. And I've also been teaching and hosting dance events since 2010. So I have 15 years worth of that experience, right? And when I was first teaching, my first 2 years, I thought I was hot shit. I was like, I'm the cool guy. You know, people are listening to me. I'm the young guy. I'm doing these cool dance moves. And then I noticed that after my lessons, no one really used what I gave them in the real world. And I was like, dang, okay, so it may be entertaining right then and there, but I'm not actually giving real impact. And so I started investing more time in how am I saying things? How am I working the room? How's my eye contact? My energy level? Am I being stiff, or am I like loosey goosey, where I almost look like the fool, which makes other people feel comfortable to loosen up themselves? Stuff like that, right? And I was looking at how does Disney World do their theme park experiences for families? How does the theater do this? So I was looking at all that, and fast forward 15 years later, someone asks me, Romi, can you just do a dance lesson real quick in front of 40 people out in the community? I'm like, sure, easy. And they're like, and then they watch it, like, wow, that was amazing. How did you do that? And I was like, well, I have 15 years where I actually did that kind of thinking. And I could easily tell you, I have over 1,000 hours of live in front of people making, like doing the lesson, whether it's in a club or in a baseball stadium in front of hundreds of people or thousands of people. I've gone through the ringer. I've taught in front of 2 people when I was told there's going to be 40 people. I've taught in front of 1 person when I was told there was going to be 200 people. And I've taught in front of, like I mentioned, in a baseball stadium, there's like 5,000 people in there. And I'm like, and this is why I could do it, because I've just gotten the reps. And when I take those reps, I'm not just a success zombie. I'm thinking about, okay, here's the situation. Here's my desired outcome. Here's my targets. And this is how I'm going to hit my targets.
I love that. I love you talked about making adjustments, like small adjustments, but throughout a long time. Now, a lot of people are going to think when they're doing reps, like they're doing the same thing, right, over and over and over. But you were like, hey, let me tweak this time. Let me tweak my eye contact this time, and maybe do that for 10 or a certain amount of time reps. Now let me tweak maybe what I'm wearing or where I stand. So you're making all these adjustments throughout your 15 years instead of just repeating the same thing for 15 years thinking you're going to get good results, which I think happens to a lot of people where they think, if I just do one thing consistent for 15 years, I'll get results. But if that one thing isn't good, but you just think if I repeat it enough times, people are going to copy it. And it could be small, subtle adjustments throughout each one of those reps. And then over time, it's like a puzzle, man. You're just trying to find the best piece to put in this puzzle. And then once it fits, you have to repeat that again, for multiple times, and then get feedback on it. Yeah. Let's talk about the feedback part of it. So how did you learn throughout these 15 years, like what to adjust, what to do better? Because obviously as an instructor, I can only imagine, like you said, the feedback was were people replicating it, right? So were they going out and they're doing it? But what else did you sort of catch on throughout that time where you knew right away what to fix, but then maybe you sat back later and you were able to digest some of it? Or does that help with like a team or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can you say that question one more time real quick?
Yeah, so how do you adjust your feedback from either your groups or your audiences to get better? Or are you very particular in your routine where you just keep doing the same thing and maybe the audience will adjust, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so what I look at on the feedback loop is, what is my objective? So, because a dance lesson, you could say a dance lesson is the same, but a dance lesson in a different scenario is a different dance lesson. So if you're hiring me for a corporate event and there's multiple department members there, typically the reason why you hired for a dance lesson is not just, you're going to say for fun, right? But what you're really looking for, there's 2 aspects. One is HR, which is retention, increasing employee morale and fun and camaraderie, so they stay longer with the company. And the other is increased productivity. So this is more of operations and revenue. Because if you have team members from different departments having bad communication, projects get delayed, and that's expensive for the business. So if I could fix that through a salsa lesson, that's a different salsa lesson than if you were to be in a dance studio with me. And so I have to think about the objective. And the feedback loop is, one, implement a survey as soon as you can. Get response of how was the experience. And sometimes it'll be an informal survey. Someone will just come up to me like, oh my God, I've never, I never thought I would be dancing in front of my coworkers, but I just feel so comfortable, blah, blah, blah. And it was because of the dance lesson, because of the way you ran the dance class. Or other places, I've had it years ago. People told me in college, they're like, one of the reasons I got through finals was because of the dance class you did, because you made us relax. And I met my wife because of your dance class, stuff like that. So it's taking a look at not just the activity itself, but what benefits does the people who attend, what benefits did they extract from that activity into other things?
Yeah, it's cool to hear you bring in the word objective. I've only heard it in like the military world on like our tactical side for how we plan for a mission when we fly. So we're given an objective from like our commander, right? On you need to blow up this many targets in this amount of time. You have to do it at this time of the day. And so that's our objective, and we have the mission plan to it. So we're like you're talking about, we say target backwards. You're thinking of an objective from the audience backwards, like how do I fit my routine to best fit the audience? So it's, I really like that. And I always thought objective was like a military term, right? Like the objective is to, like kill the enemy or win the war, right? So when I hear you throw an objective out, yeah, it was, I don't know, it's almost like humbling to be like, oh, okay. So, and that's why I love doing these conversations, because I understand it's not just the military that uses these terms, right? Like corporate world is using them probably on their scale of priorities for the month or the quarter, right? Or same as with your business, like you guys have goals you're trying to meet, and maybe for income or people or attendance, and then you break it down to how do we do that? Well, if our objective is this, how do we get there?
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. Yeah. Let's move on to Andy and Sal, because that's how we met. So we met at a Summer Smash event. I think it was my first one. And was it?
That was my first one.
Or 20? No, 20.
21.
21. Yeah.
Yeah. We were in a group chat. You and I and we were in a group chat trying to figure out that year, but with Brandon, I was thinking of his last name, Lawson, for some reason.
So we met up there, and I think both of us at the same time, we were newer in like the Legionnaire first form stuff, trying to figure out what this like community is, right? Like I didn't know much about it before Summer Smash.
No, you were the rookie. I was more of a veteran. So I was with the Legionnaire since 2019 or 18.
Yeah.
So, but it was our first. We were both first timers at the actual headquarters and actually being around other Legionnaires or actual family. Yeah, PH with the family. Yeah.
Yeah. So to see that atmosphere is what really is really humbling. To really see that's how they are in real life. Like guys like Andy and Will and TJ, all those people that are really big in that business. They're not just business people on social media. They were humble up front. They were approachable. They were hardworking. And then we bring in Andy and Sal, the big names of it. And for those listening that don't know, Andy and Sal are obviously the founder, CEO of First Form Supplement Superstore, where their story is crazy. But their core values and the way they live their life is just, it's beyond comparable, I think. And I look at it as, from a military perspective, those guys were never in the military, but they sort of organize it and they talk about it a lot. Like when I went to headquarters and I was talking to the guys, they're like, hey, we got a lot of our core values and the way we set our abilities from like the military perspective. And they've had a lot of great people on. They have a lot of connections with them. So how do you still take some of that into what you do now with Andy and Sal and their hero aspect for you?
Yeah. So with Sal's more, speaking from my perspective, Sal's more on the operational side of what First Form is. So he's not as well known as Andy. And I look at Sal similar to how I look at Layla. Again, Layla manages the operations side of the Hormozi's business. And so I've been in, team calls with Sal, with other Legionnaires before, and just seeing the way he talks about core values, living the core values, taking care of his family, his kids, and that even though it sucks, he's going to do 30 for 30, or he's going to do 8-week challenge on top of what he does with family and work, right? And I can't necessarily get that same role model from Andy because Andy doesn't have kids. And that's just a factual statement, right? So, and from Andy, I get inspiration. I get believe in your mission, your big vision of why you're doing what you're doing, and just go after it. GSD, right? Get shit done formula. I got that from Andy, or the like 0 to 100 mentality. Like these quote unquote hardcore frameworks, I got a lot of that from Andy Frisella. And it's funny because the first time I saw him, it was via Gary Vaynerchuk. And I thought Andy was just this like loud mofo who's super, I was like, yeah, of course he's going to be loud and quote unquote arrogant because he's like 6'2". He's huge. He's tatted up. He's got a big ass truck. This guy kicks ass, right? But then as I learned more about if I disregard his gruff voice, the man cares.
Yeah.
He cares so much. And then I learned how to be sincere towards other people because of him. Like, you know, he's given tactics of like, yeah, when you meet new people, you want to give a sincere compliment. Hey, I like your glasses, dude, or cool shades, dude. And he pulled that move on me when I met him at Summer Smash. And I was like, wow. And it felt sincere. And I enjoyed my time. And learning those habits, I got them from him.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've taken is really just that mindset of, you know, you have to have the pedal down. Like there is no relaxing, which is hard. You know, some people it's hard for them to just like process that. I'm like, you can't be 100 all the time. Like I'm like, dude, you have to be 100 all the time to get results in this day and age. Because if you let off the gas or you doubt yourself or you know you take a step back, dude, people are going to catch up. Like that's just the way it is. And I love how he talks about the competition side of business. You know, like competition breeds success and hard work and better results. And so that aspect is really humbling to see too. Now in the military, it's always tough because for us to compete is a little different, right? Because so that side is tough. And I'm obviously in the military where competition is not the same. You know, like I'm not surrounded by, I say athletes, right? And that persona of what people mean by competition. And so it's always tough for me really to keep the pedal down all the time around my military people. I put in air quotes, because to them it is very arrogant and cocky. You know, like when I'm over here, like I show up to Squadron PT and they're like, "Hey Manny, like you ready for PT?" I'm like, "Dude, I just ran here 5 miles. Like, of course I'm ready. Like, what do you think we're gonna do?" They're like, "Oh, okay, yeah." I'm like, "Bro, we're here to play dodgeball. Like, if this is your PT, you're failed. Like, you are wrong. Like, this should not be your PT for the day."
Yeah,
or
no,
like
I laugh at that because, well, one, like quick plug, I joined you as my accountability coach on the first format, right? And so I posted my photo. I'm fat as hell, dude. I am way out of shape from when you and I were first getting to know each other. And the funny thing is too, even though I'm out of shape, with people I work with or random strangers, I'm like, yeah, like let's do some push-ups real quick. Let's do some air squats while we're waiting, and we do it, and or I do it, and they're like, you're crazy, and I'm like, well, like I may look like this, but I'm ready to respond to any situation. You know what I'm saying? And they look at me like, that's like, are you hoping something bad happens? It's like, no, it's just I'm ready. You know, I don't know how else to explain it. Like we're always thinking of the next move, or I work with a lot of business people too, small business owners, and similar to you, like even though they may have titles where everyone's always going after it, right? Not everyone's always going after it. Not everyone is fulfilling 100% on maybe all 4 categories. My 4 categories are typically underneath the umbrellas of faith, family, fitness, and finance, right? And so for me, finance or business, I have that 100%. Fitness, I just admit it, I'm fat. That's not 100%, so I need to fix that. Family and friendship, how are my relationships with other people? It could be improved. When was the last time I talked to my sister or my brother? Or when's the last time I talked to my friends outside of a work relationship? Because I happen to always want to talk about work. Work is fun for me. And I know other people, they can't talk about work nonstop. So I got to fix that. Faith, like whether you believe in God or whatever, what are you doing to maintain your core values or to feed your core values? And so I pray every single day, before every single meal. First thing I do when I wake up, thank you, Lord, for letting me have life again and for letting me help other people. And so like I go at those four things, and when I notice something's not right, one, I start feeling a little bit depressed because I'm like, I'm not in congruence with what I want to be, my the potential, right? Ed Milet says, what's our maximum potential? And I'm like, man, you're fat. And other people are like, Romi, you look great. But to me, I'm like, no, this isn't what I want to be if I want to be a role model to other people.
Let's dive into these 4 categories, because I love it, because I think everybody should have either a foundation to everything they do is leading towards, right? So the way I see this as every task you do during the day, every asset you're invested in, every new opportunity you should tie into something to move you forward. For you, those 4 categories, everything you're doing, like if you're making a decision on your business, does it tie into those? No, get rid of it. I've heard it on tons of podcasts, and I love it every time I hear it. My favorite one is with Ed Milet and Matthew McConaughey, and they talk about it very well. McConaughey talks about it's not trying to balance them all at the top. It's picking and choosing which one I'm focused on at the time to move ahead. You know,
I agree.
some people call it harmony. Some people call it just like shifting focus and attention. But everything we do should drive towards one of those pillars or one of those bars on a bar graph, right? And you're never going to have them all even. You know, like it's just the way life is. And, you know, you'll hear it on a lot of good podcasts where there's like balance does not exist. It's, hey, am I focused right now for these next 30, 60, 90 days on faith? Because that's one that fell off the pedestal, right? It's in the red. I think that's how Matthew, I think he uses it as the red, green, and yellow sort of like areas.
Oh, yeah.
What's red right now I need to pick up? And McConaughey talks about friends as one of them. Like, hey, I haven't reached out to somebody in a while. Maybe I need to pick up my friendship. I've been working really hard in his role, like an acting role. So my finances and business are up, but my faith and fitness have dropped. Let me pick those up and that's where I'm at right now in my career, where I just had to talk with my commander, or my next commander actually, and he laid it just like I expected to. He was like, hey, Manny, or Snare, like the past 2 years, you have been moving your pillar of career advancement up. You've been working on your leadership. You've been working on yourself. You've been working on your family. That pillar is pretty high. But your aviation, my flying pillar, dropped off. I haven't flown in 2 years, so my currency has dropped off. He's like, you're coming back to the squadron, and we're going to pick up that pillar. We're going to balance it out. Your career may fall a little. Your family may get a little busy, but this is what's lacking. And I told him, I was like, sir, that's exactly, that's the feedback I will take. Now, if he were to come at me and be like, no, you're just going to fly. Here's what we're going to focus on. I probably would have took it the wrong way, but when he was able to lay it out, like, hey, you're right. I have pushed that off the pillar because I really wanted to become a better leader. I really wanted to focus on myself to become a better person. And so, yes, so on a long tangent on my end, even though you said before, stop me if I get into a tangent, on my tangent, the 4 pillars that you have, which you know, everything you're doing in your life should be adding to those pillars. Have you seen that in the past few years on your life where you've had to pick and choose those and balance them out?
Yeah. All the time. During COVID, the 2020, 2021, my priority was faith and family. So I made it a point every day, text message 5 people that you haven't talked to in a while. Just say you're thinking about them, hoping they're doing well. And I made it a point to say I love you to my family. This might sound crazy to you, but since I've been an adult, I'm 33 now. It took until I think 2019, which is what, 29? I don't know how to do math. 2019, 5 years ago, 33 minus 5, 28. So since I've been an adult, it took me until I was 28 to be willing to say I love you to my older brother and my younger sister out loud. I normally would be like, hey, you know how I feel about you, rather than say I love you as a parting statement. And that was my priority. I was like, I want to be able to say I love you, right? And then it kind of pivoted to, hey, I want a 6-pack, or I want to finish 75 hard. So go right before COVID actually hit and we got shut down. That's the week that we got shut down. that was the last week of my 75 hard. Right. And that was my focus of fitness. And now my focus is finance. I'm actually a lot better than where I used to be. But I have debt that I want to take care of. And I've talked to to my friends who have wives and relationships, and they're like, why are you still single? And I'm like, I want to be in a relationship, but having some type of bad debt over my head makes me not want to date someone seriously. So I'm going to prioritize my debt.
So for those listening and that are curious on like, how do you make these adjustments? How do you monitor? How do you know where to shift focus? What do you have set in place? Or is it like a timeline where you're like, hey, for 6 months, I'm going to focus on this? Or what's your feedback loop on that, on those 4 categories to let you know when to adjust, when you're sort of, you've met it? Like, what do you have like a tracker? I don't know. Like, what do you have?
Yeah. I would say get into introspection. So you could do it if we go by calendar year. Before January hits in December, start looking like, all right, what are my targets for next year? So 2025, by the end of 2025, what's my goal? What do I want to have achieved? And then work backwards, right? Working backwards, we're going to have quarterly check-ins of whatever these focuses are. And then as the time progresses, hey, this last quarter, so here, I'll give you an example. So last December, I told my coworkers, yeah, I want to prioritize getting into a relationship for 2024, right? And obviously we are 7 months into 2024. I just mentioned I reprioritize finance versus relationship. Mm-hmm. And I identified that within the first quarter of 2024 that I was like, why do I keep turning down opportunities for dating by people who are asking for me, and which I'm grateful for that ladies ask for my number, but it's like, why am I saying no? And it's like, oh, like this debt is over my shoulder. I want to prioritize that. I go by quarterly, and I'm a bit more hardcore. I do monthly check-ins too, and then I also do weekly check-ins as well. So I feel I'm almost obsessed when it comes to figuring out finance and business. Like, if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm listening to a podcast that's going to help me with my business or whatever business ideas I have. Mm-hmm. So I was just listening to copywriting. And then before that, I was listening to sales flows and stuff like that. So that's where my obsession is right now.
Yeah, one of the things I'll add on to that is I like vision boards as a visual way to adjust where my focus is and priorities. So for those listening, I think I've said on a few podcasts already, but within the First Form world is where I got it. They preach and talk about vision boards to help track, monitor your progress, right? So I have a vision board on my desktop. It's on my phone. It's printed in my gym. It's on my work computer, because everything I'm doing, every new passion, every new task should align with something on that vision board. Like right now, I could cross out 3 of the X's on my vision board, which is pretty cool because 3 years ago, man, I made that thing almost 3 years ago. Some of it has already happened. I got my home gym. There's a picture of a home gym on there. There's a picture of a house with acres. Heck, I'm living in a house with acres now. Is it the house in the picture? But no, but it's Andy talks about it. It's a vision board is intended to keep you going towards something that you don't think is possible, but it's bigger than you. And so I have the land. I have my own gym that's on there. What's crazy is I have a picture of Andy Farcell's podcast on there because I want to be on his podcast. What's my vision? I started a podcast. So to have that like connection and motivation was cool. There's obviously a couple other ones that I'm still working towards, but I can shift now my focus to those ones after those were achieved. And then I'm going to tie in one thing. I made a post about this today. Don't focus on the when it happens, the W-H-E-N, but the win, the W-I-N. Because a lot of people are going to focus on when they should be finishing their vision or goals. And so that gets them sidetracked. If like you set a specific goal on, hey, by 2024, December 31st, I'm going to be in a relationship. But then through the year, you notice, oh, I'm not there. It's going to throw you off. But if your goal is just to get in a relationship, it'll happen. It'll get there. And so that's why I like a vision board. I don't have like a date on any of these visions, right? I don't have like in 3 months, I'm going to have a podcast. It's just there. Because when it happens, I'm going to look up and be like, oh shit, there's my podcast. Let me cross that out. I tie it really big to the religious side too. Like God already knows when we're going to do things in life. He knows. He knows when I'm going to start a podcast or when I'm going to get there. It's up for me to keep moving that way and just trust that it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I just want to hop on that vision board. So I don't use a vision board because I could imagine things pretty easily. And I'm more of a list person type of guy. But what you're also alluding to is you have a big goal and you just know that you have to have behavioral actions that will move you directionally towards that goal, right? Like, because for example, one of my goals was on LinkedIn to be identified as a small business, like recognized as a small business of some sort. They're like influencers on LinkedIn. So I have that badge now. But last year I told myself, it was at Q4, I said, hey, by the end of this year, going to January, I'm going to have that badge where LinkedIn identifies me as a subject matter expert with regards to small business. I didn't hit it because I wasn't actually doing the behavioral actions that brings me towards that direction. I ended up hitting it 2 months ago. And when I hit it, it wasn't one I was like, oh my God, I hit it. It was like, oh, dang, yeah, I just hit it. All right, what's the next goal? What's the next behavioral action I got to do? Like how you were saying, you all of a sudden you notice, all right, I could cross this off my vision board.
All right, let's dive in. Oh shoot, I think we covered all the ones I had on the category stuff. You have to have something that you're aiming towards, which like for me is my leadership philosophy, and we'll get that in a little bit. So like that's how I live my daily life. They may not be family, faith, fitness, but they're lead by example in all I do, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get to that one. We talked about how to adjust them, how to get feedback on them, how to track them. Okay, the next question I had was, let's go into that next hero, Jocko, right? So you're not a military guy. A lot of the military people know Jocko. What ties you into Jocko on the non-military side as a person that likes Jocko?
Yeah, sure. So what really got me hooked onto Jocko was extreme ownership, the accountability thing of just making your life better overall. That book changed the way I think about things, and then his podcast too. But what really made me a believer, I guess, of Jocko Willink as a hero is so quick backstory. My entire family growing up as a teenager, everyone thought I was going to join the military first. I have an older brother. So everyone was like, all right, Romi's going to go police or military. My older brother ended up going before me, and no one saw that coming. And so when I was graduating from high school, I took the ASVAB, and I had a 91 percentile as a senior. And I was like, oh, I'm ready to go. And my brother said, hold the phone. You're going to be the first one of our immediate family to go to a graduate or undergraduate school, 4-year university. Go do that first. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I didn't care about school at all. And then while I was in school, that itch came back. I want to join the military. So I went through the whole process, talking to a recruiter, and so I went through, fast forward 5 years later, I went through all components of Army and Air Force. So that's your active, reserve, and guard. I went through all components to try and get in as someone with a bachelor's degree to be an enlistee. And I was disqualified at MEPS because I dislocated shoulders. The first one I got disqualified for, I got a waiver for that. And then the very last one, they caught me with scoliosis. And I was trying to hide it, but I was so mad because, when you're in that MEPS room, everyone has just their boxers on. They make you frog walk and all that, or crab walk, whatever, or duck walk. And you're like, man, I am more fit than all of you, even you Marine recruits. Like, why am I being rejected? And I was just so depressed. And so when that happened, again, all three components of each of these military branches rejected me. I was like, man, what am I doing with my life? I want to serve. I want to help. And Jocko had a podcast addressing people who were not offered the opportunity to serve in the military. And he mentioned you have to find another way to serve. And that podcast is what made me like a full-on believer of Jocko, is that there's other ways to help the people around you, help your community, help your nation. And you do it by being a role model. And that when you are not on the path, like he likes to say it, then you find a way to get back on the path.
Nice. That's good, man. Yeah. Yeah, I think what I like about him is the stuff he talks about doesn't, like you just said, doesn't apply directly to the military. Like he's not always speaking to military people. Like his books aren't geared really towards military. There's, Extreme Ownership is, I think there's another one that I like. It's like Tactical Leadership Strategies or whatever. Very good book.
Yep.
But yeah, and that's cool. It's cool to hear because yeah, I was just interested. I was like, oh, a guy that likes the military guy, but like you said, he doesn't speak always to the military. He's really trying to help just really everybody be a better person.
Yeah. And final note on that is, again, he keeps me grounded because at the end of the day, when I'm listening to a podcast, when I was doing 75 Hard, I would do my outdoor walk at like 1 or 2 in the morning. So super dark, right? And for 75 days straight, I had his podcast in my ears. And sometimes he would have combat veterans on who would cry and weep because they felt guilty that they survived when their friend jumped over something for them or protected them. And so those stories, that firsthand experience story, is just like, dude, what's wrong with you, Romi? Why are you pissed off about something at work? Life is still happening. Like, it's not that serious. So let's get grounded.
Yeah. I think that's why I personally like David Goggins' book. While a lot of people will think, very Jocko-ish, very extreme, right? Like Goggins' story is crazy. So a lot of people always think like, oh, you like Goggins because he's just insane. I'm like, no, he shows that it's possible. He grounded me when I read it. That's why I tell people don't read Goggins' book because it'll make you look like a pussy if you think you're going through hard stuff. And that's why I hated reading it because I was like, just like, you're talking about it. I was like, why am I complaining going on a 45-minute walk right now?
What the heck, bro? Like, what? I got my limbs. I have a roof. I have clothes. I'm like, oh man, it's a cold night. It's 30 degrees. Okay, well, I was able to put on two pairs of sweats on me. Like, shut up, dude.
Yeah, it's
very humbling.
That's the word. Humbling is a good word.
Yeah,
and that's why I always like to recommend books like that for people listening because sometimes we just need that perspective on it can be worse. What I have isn't too bad. I just got to work harder and get through it. And so, yeah. All right, let's shift gears. That was great. Great conversation there just on the heroes, which was really cool. But we'll dive into my leadership philosophy. So everybody's heard it before if you've listened. I developed my leadership philosophy based on a course you have to take when you're selected for a major in the Air Force called ACSC. It's like a leadership master's program, and one of the first classes you take is a leadership philosophy class. I had no idea what to expect. I just heard ACSC was just a check mark people do to do. So I signed up for the class, and I was like, oh, this is a pretty cool class. And I was in a development phase of my life. And last year when I started taking it, one of the questions is, if you're taking command of a squadron, you have a couple minutes to brief your team. How do you lead? And I was like, oh, interesting. And so it talks about leadership philosophy. Simple statements, factual, people can live off of. And I was like, cool, let's make one. So I did. Lead by example in all you do. To be selfless, you have to be selfish. Build relationships based off trust and care. Challenge the road in front of you by getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And if it sounds like I say it fast, it's because I do, because I've memorized it. I live by it. I say it every day. That's my categories, right, that you talked about with your 4 categories. That's sort of my 4 categories.
Yeah.
Everything I do.
And you'll notice, sorry to interrupt, Manny, sorry to interrupt, but you'll notice we riffed off our core values so fast. Earlier, I was like, faith, family, fitness. I was surprised you caught it too. But we could only riff it off so quickly because we think about it all the time.
Yeah. Like every time I say it, I go, man, I should just slow down and say it. But then I can't, dude, because like when I say it, just like you talked about, we just say it. It's like there. But yeah, so everything I do, I aim towards those things. If I'm going to start something new, I'm going to be like, does it help me lead by example? Doing hard things? Yes. Does it help me build relationships? Inviting airmen to come work out with me in my gym and then feed them breakfast? Yes, I'm building relationships. Being on social media? Yes, I'm challenging the road in front of me because not a lot of officers in the military are on social media talking about this stuff. So I'm challenging the road there. So that's how I tie that in. But out of those 4, I always like to hear from you guys. Which one do you use in your life that you feel comfortable with? and which one do you need to work on, and how would you work on it for those listening that may need to work on it too?
The first question is, which one are we good at right now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Which one are you like, hey, I like that one.
Yeah.
Here's how I do it.
Yeah, I feel to be selfless, you have to be selfish and build relationships based on trust and care. It's almost like a 1-2 punch for me. And the reason I say that is because, I'm also a business consultant. That's my day job. And I work with small businesses. And a lot of what I do is just, I'm putting it out there that I'm trying to help you out, asking for nothing in return. And it's like, hey, have you met so-and-so? They do something similar. You might be able to partner up on this. Or here's an article regarding your industry that you probably haven't seen yet. Here's first glimpse for you, or stuff like that. And that's being selfless, that you're just giving. Because I know that if I give more, one, it feels good, but eventually it's going to come back my way somehow, right? Whether I ask for it explicitly or they just feel that they have to give back. It's going to come back to me some way. And that's where the relationship is built on trust. Because if someone is just transactionally interacting with you, you feel it. One of the biggest things I always say is like, man, if your friend you see a good friend of yours, and every time you see him, the first thing out of his word is, hey man, can I borrow $1? You're gonna be like, dude, I don't want to see you anymore, right? So we have to give first, be selfless, and eventually that builds the trust, that builds relationship that they want to give back. So I feel that I do that pretty well. By the way, the consulting work I do, it is at no cost because I work. I'm within the federal budget, so we do it at no cost because we're trying to help out small businesses. And this is actually how I built Dance on the Edge. Our entire claim to fame in our local area in Sacramento is free family fun community events. We don't charge you. It costs us thousands of dollars to do an event for this, but we're not going to charge anybody. We want the community to come out and do it. And then what ends up happening? Hey, Romi, we want to do dance lessons for our corporate event. And then we're able to bring money in that way, right? So it's being selfless, builds trust, it builds relationships, and then eventually it comes back my way. So that was a long answer to say I think that's where I'm strong at.
No, that's good. I love it. I love it because for most people, their job is going to include some of those, right? So like your job is building a relationship, which is perfect, right? Like, hey, what I want a lot of people to realize is leadership traits are not chaotic. They're not like you have to create them all the time or they're specific to you. If your job requires you to have leadership traits, those are leadership traits, like speaking in public, dancing in public, like those are all leadership traits, like how to move, how to take care of your body. One of the things I've found with leadership is a lot of people overcomplicate how to develop leadership skills. When in reality, a lot of the things they're doing in their daily life are leadership skills. And that ties into my leadership traits, right? Like showing up to work on time. And I say this in all my podcasts, is a pretty good leadership trait because it's so not done nowadays, where if you show up on time, it could prove to be a pretty good leadership trait. It shows you understand time, you understand getting somewhere in place, structuring your schedule. Exercising is a great leadership trait that some people may overlook or overcomplicate. Looking into somebody's eyes, smiling, speaking with authority. If your job has those leadership traits, you got to use them and you got to apply them. So for you talked about like, hey, my job is building relationships, so I have to be good at building relationships, man. Like, it's just. But what I also liked is you had intent behind it. You talked about I'm not just building relationships to get all of this, for myself. There is intent behind it. I want to get to know the person. I care for the person. And that's where the next step is to building relationships. Is if it's part of your job, are you only doing it for your job? Or are you doing it because you actually really care about relationships? And then in the end, you forget you're even doing it for your job. You're just out there getting to know people, putting on dance lessons, just for fun. And then, it ties in later on down the road.
Yeah. And like with regards to jobs, it's like, well, what's your level of conviction and belief towards your job, right?
Yeah.
So I tell people as a consultant, dude, I get paid to play. I already was asking people, what are you doing to increase retention? What are you doing to market your business? Like, because I was working with dancers and DJs. I'm like, how do you get more gigs, guys? I kind of know what works for me. Let me share that with you. And I just happened to stumble upon this position where I'm more of a formalized business consultant, right? But then circling back to your other question of where can I improve on? And that's leading by example in all we do. So I mentioned faith, family, fitness, and finance.
Yeah.
Finance, I said I'm taking care of that. I'm making the most I've ever made on a salary, and I'm paying off a lot more than I ever was able to pay off in debt before, right? But then what about the other areas? Have I been contacting my family or building a relationship? I told you, hey, yo, I'm fat. Like, I need to get back in shape. And that's where I feel that one of the reasons why I'm so comfortable leading by example in the finance side, because I've done it where I built a business, built a network, learned how to do sales, get cash flow in and get clients. I've done so many reps of that. But now I need to get more reps back into fitness, into relationships, into my family and stuff like that. So that's where I could improve on. It's like I can't lead by example in all I do, but I could change, like you mentioned, pivoting where my focus is at a given time.
I think what I really love that you hit there is people may think to lead by example, I have to do it at things I'm good at. But what you talked about is sometimes we have to pivot and work on the things we're not good at to lead by example to show that we want to get better at something, right? So, for instance, like my podcast this year was my lead by example. Yes, I love talking to people. I love doing that, but do I know how to do it over audio? Do I know how to run a podcast? Do I know much about, I call it a business per se, like marketing, advertising, speaking about it, getting an app to do it? No. And so my lead by example was learning how to get better at it. Like I'm slowly getting better at, like, I think the last two were the first ones where I had a structured intro. So that's me leading by example as I adjust throughout the way. It also ties me into, and this is a huge thing too, is when we start something to lead by example, we don't have to have the 100% method when we start. You can adjust as you go. So a lot of people are nervous to lead by example in, let's say, fitness if they're trying to lose weight, because what if they don't do it? What if they fail? What if they don't hit their goal? Then they're like, oh, I didn't lead by example. Well, you are, trust me. If you're out there thinking you're not leading by example because you're putting yourself out there, you are. But you also have to adjust as you go to sort of get better too. And that's why I look at leading by example to where I view it as my social media with all the airmen. When I say airmen, like the lower enlisted that follow me on social media. What do they see me leading by example in? First, it was losing a bunch of weight, doing 35 hard, the physical side. What are they seeing now? Well, maybe now it's my family life, right? Like, hey, I'm about to have a baby soon. How does Manny lead by example in being a father and manage working out and doing this with a new baby, right? My kids are a little bit older to where exercising for them is fun. So that challenge isn't really there anymore because they just do it with me. But so for people listening, leading by example isn't something you're really good at. It's how are you challenging yourself in those other areas of your life to make yourself better. Yeah.
And I agree. And I'll use a term you like a lot probably is to piggyback on that. Like I feel when you're doing things that you're not comfortable with, part of leading by example is that you're not stopping. You're kind of crazy because you're gonna keep trying. You're gonna keep trying, whether it's trying to lose weight, whether it's trying to have better relationships or better finances. Just keep trying, and that is you leading by example.
Yeah, most people just need to see people try to start their own journey. And that's why I love the term leading by example, because it allows me to show other people it's possible with just slow 4 steps, right? Protein, calories, water, movement, right? It's nothing extreme. It's just showing people it can be done through those little things. We're laughing, you guys, because we say this all the time. So if you're listening to this podcast and you hear me say it all the time, you're probably going to laugh too. But yes, that's a good one. So let's, man, we're at 50 minutes already, which is crazy. Is there any leadership traits you saw on my list that you want to bring up that we can talk about for maybe 5 to 10 minutes that jumped out at you, or ones you want to add?
Do you mind if I take a quick second to just go through
ahead.
it?
We'll pause for an intermission in my commercial for everybody that I don't do ads. So. Oh, man.
One that's sticking out, share your wins and struggles. It's kind of like piggybacking what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Always be learning, meet new people, or control time. You choose.
Ooh. Let's do control time. I do always be learning a lot because it's just a great one to talk about. But control time. What does that mean to you?
Literally, it's how much I have 24 hours in a day. I control what I do in those 24 hours in a day, or like I'm supposed to control what I do in those 24 hours in a day, right? And obviously, if I decide to be lazy, that was in my control. But is it in my control where it was the lazy lizard in my head, or was it this is actually what I want to do because I want to not do whatever else I can do.
Yeah, so for somebody listening that's trying to figure out how to have a structured control of time of their day, what habits or tips or tricks have you used? Has it been a calendar, an app, auditing your day? What have you found useful?
I have Jocko's, one of his favorite phrases, disciplines equals freedom, in the back of my head.
That's a great freaking phrase, man.
It's so good. That, and the other one, my favorite from Dave Burke, is subordinate your ego. But that's a different topic. Discipline equals freedom. Like I tell people, the best times I've ever had in my life in terms of quality was when one time was when I was working from 4 a.m. until noon. And I would be so disciplined that I'm going to sleep by 6 p.m. every day. So I could be up by 2 a.m., do my thing, and then go walk to work. And then if I had to go do anything outside of the 6 p.m., I was just so strict with it, right? And that those are a bit of a hardcore hours. The other best time of my life ever was when I did 75 hard. I just told you I would do my night walk at 1 or 2 in the morning. And on average, I slept maybe four hours a day. And I was excited if I slept 5 hours. And what I was doing at that time, I worked from 8 to 5 p.m. plus travel time, which is an hour. I did 2 hours at the gym doing Olympic weightlifting. And I was also building the Downtown DX brand. We went from 1 event a month to 3 events a month at 3 different venues. And we went from just having 400 people to show up into thousands of people showing up. And that discipline equals freedom, or controlling time, it was just like, this is hard. I may be kind of tired because I'm not getting as much sleep that's optimal for me. But all of a sudden, I have luck on my side, or I'm creating luck. My goals on my vision board or my list are getting taken care of automatically just because I'm showing up and I'm so focused on my targets. And I'm focused on my targets because I don't have enough time. I'm limited by 24 hours. So I had to maximize every single 15 minutes just to get something done. Like when I looked at my calendar during 75 hard, I'm like, oh, I could squeeze in a 20-minute nap right there. Perfect. Knock it out. All right, get your ass outside. Got to go on the walk now. Oh, hey, you're about to hit your end of day to report, 75 hard day completed. You got to read. Knock it out right now. Go. Like to someone who's never done something this extreme, it sounds so crazy and hardcore. But I felt that I was in total control of my time. And because of that, things were just getting done.
Dude, oh my God, I feel like I can talk about this for another hour. Fudge, I'm about to go off. This is going to be fun. I love this freaking phrase because my most structured and successful, I say, time in my life was when I was super, super busy. Like when I had no time to waste. And when I was in college doing ROTC, I was working a part-time job. I was a reservist. I was playing football. I was married. My wife was working nights. Though that was my best semester of college, GPA-wise, because I had no time to dick around. Like my morning was wake up at 4, go to weights for football, shower, eat something really quick, go to class by 8, I had a break at noon, another class probably afternoon. Then I had film around 2. We had practice from like 4 to like 7. I had study session. I was in bed by 8. Dude, like, best GPA in my life, most structured time in my life. But it was the most freeing because, oh my God, because it was so disciplined. And my worst GPA of my college career was when I had more time to dick around, which is crazy. Like, you would think like, oh, I wasn't doing football my senior year. I didn't have hard classes. That was my lowest GPA when I could have had best grades because those were the only things I was focused on. 75
I
hard
agree.
is a great, yeah.
I totally agree. My worst GPA that messed me up when I was in college was my first class started at 3 p.m. I was like, what the heck am I? I was like, oh, cool, I can start. This is a freshman, but that messed me up because I was like, I wasn't held accountable to do anything. And I guess going to your question about tools that I use. So besides having discipline equals freedom in my head, it's my calendar, bro. Like, if you're not on the calendar, it's not going to happen for the most part. Now,
Yeah,
on my calendar, I do have gaps where it's planned to do random stuff. But again, I have my 4 Fs. I am looking at those. And I'm like, hey, if I want to be in a relationship, I just admitted earlier, money in the back of my head is my constraint. So I got to remove that constraint to get to my objective of having a relationship. Yeah, it may sound crazy to other people, but that's my priorities.
Yeah, I've adjusted to getting better at my calendar that I have every week. It's just, and what I've found with having a calendar and inputting what I want to focus on, when I have those gaps now in my, because every Monday I sit there and I usually put all my meetings for the week in there for work. So I have those times. Then I plan my second workout of the day in there. So I have those blocks. And now I can pick and choose where to add time for intent and assets, right? I'm not looking at those times like time's off. No, like that doesn't exist. Like, I show up to work at 8:30. I check emails from about 8:30 to 9:30. I send my emails. I check my emails for the day. 9:30 to 10, I'll eat breakfast at my desk, do some social media because that's an intentful social media block of time. 10 to about 11, there's usually random meetings or I'm getting ready to go to the gym. So I'm taking my pre-workout. I'm planning my workout. And then I go to the gym for lunch. I come back, usually there's more emails to check. So I have found when I've structured my calendar with big blocks of this, like my vision board, right? Those extra gaps, I'm like, hey, let's sneak in. I have 30 minutes here, 2 text messages to friends. Hey, I have an hour block here. Let's do my assessments for my app. Boom, I'm filling those blocks. I'm not keeping them open for downtime. I'm filling them ahead of time, sort of to get ahead and catch up on areas I've been slacking, or like the text messaging of friends or building relationships or calling somebody. I'm sliding these like pucks, and filling these gaps. And then I look at my board on Monday and I should go, not bad, My 3:50 to 7:30 is pretty standard every day. Wake up, read, drink my pre-workout, watch a little Netflix, workout, come back, make breakfast, pack lunches, wake up the kids, shower, change, take my pictures, weigh myself. That's all before 7:30. So I'm always pretty good about that. If there's any time I need to get better, it's usually the evening time. So that's usually the time where sports practices are going to change things. I don't know what I'm making for dinner.
Yeah.
But it's also allowed me the flexibility in my evenings to not have to worry about them being so structured, because of the family. Like, I come home in the evening and I'm like, hey, my wins today are pretty stacked up. So I could take a downtime, this hour or not do I did my afternoon work. And I always liked in my lunch workout because then I'd come home and just like go for a walk with my family, not worried. Or I bounce in that afternoon workout or my lunch workout into the afternoon if I had a meeting pop up. I have that downtime structured in my evening where usually about 4 to 5 is where I can text my wife like, hey babe, I didn't get to work out during lunch. I'm going to come home, go to the death cave, let the kids know I'll be out there. If they want to come join me, they can. Cool. It's planned in there as like a backup.
Yeah.
Then usually from like 5 to 7, we have practices or dinner or stuff like that.
Yeah. And you touched on a good point, because if we're constantly on the go, I do know certain people are going to burn out, right? It's just natural. But what you're talking about too is also purposely setting up time where you have flexibility.
Yeah.
That freedom part is like, hey, I knocked out all the things I had to do already. So I have 1 hour of free time, I want to just sit down and, look up how to cook something or do random stuff with my family. Cool. I could do it because I already did what I had to do earlier today. It's kind of like in the fitness side, right? Hey, try and get as much protein and water in you can throughout in the beginning of the day so that you have free budget later on a little bit, right? It's stuff like that.
It's being intentful with time to not make it seem lazy, but you have planned that lazy time in your day. Like you talked about, I will plan naps or I will plan to take, like this time to do nothing because it's intentful. It's not just me making an excuse not to do it. Like, like it's just a puck we input into our schedule to do something with.
Yeah. And for some reason, whenever the calendar is busy, everything just happens to work out the way I want it to work out. I don't know how.
It does, man. And it definitely ties into long-term goals, focusing on the WIN instead of the WHEN, right? Because we're just doing these small tasks every single day. When we look up and breathe, we go, check, 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 check. Woo! All right.
Yeah.
But then we go, what's next? We're not like, cool, I'm going to take a month off to sit back. It's like, nope, what's next on the vision board? What picture am I updating? For you, it's like, what's moving up on my list, right? What's moving up on my priorities?
Yeah.
That's the next, I think that's the next level right there.
Yeah. And I also want to ask too, again, on the burnout theme, right? What do you do to reward yourself whenever you are making wins, right? Because there was a certain time where I was just nonstop and I was just grinding nonstop, but I wasn't rewarding myself. Like I wasn't celebrating. People were like, dude, you're kicking ass. I'm like, bro, whatever, get out of here. I got and I realized, dude, I was just depressed. I was like, what the hell am I working for?
For me, it's knowing what I'm doing so much is going to lead. I don't know. I enjoy it though. I don't know. It's weird. Like it's because of the task I'm doing, I enjoy. Burnout usually comes from people doing a task they may not be getting a lot from, but they have to. Like that's why a job is usually a burnout. Like in the military, flyers get burnt out really quick because we're flying so much. We don't necessarily enjoy it. It's just our job. When I am enjoying my daily tasks that are keeping me busy, I'm not going to burn out, man. Like I love smoking myself in the gym because I know in the end goal, which is like when I'm 80 or something, like, I don't know, like maybe that's when, I don't know. I don't think I'll get burnt out because the stuff I'm doing is leading with intent to something bigger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
no, I agree with that because like, I've mentioned multiple times, I'm not at the fitness level that I want, but I'm like, well, I could bust out 30 push-ups, strict push-ups right now. And I'm happy that I could do that. And that's why I like exercising. I know I could do it. Or if I was in better shape, when I had my six packs, whatever, 75 hard life, I was like, yeah, dude, I look sexy. Like I work out because I look sexy. Or on the finance side, dude, I grind so much again, because I want to pay off some bad debt. But if family says, Romi, I need to borrow $500 or whatever have you, you're not going to borrow it. It's yours. And that security is like, dude, this is why I love what I do.
And that motivates you to continue the grind and continue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's not a grind. It's just like, instead of using a negative reinforcement, I'm using positive reinforcement. Hey, Romi, the reason you work so much is so that you could, anytime someone needs help, you have a better chance of helping them out. It's about the positive reinforcement so that you don't feel burnt out. If it's all negative, like, oh, Romi, if you don't work, you're not going to be able to pay your bills. That's where it feels like a grind and a burnout. But hey, Romi, because like if you go to work, dude, you could choose if you want steak or lobster. Your choice, man. And it's like, oh yeah, bro, I could do this all day.
Yeah. Man, that was a solid 10 minutes.
Oh man, this hour has gone by so fast. I enjoy this. I tell people, or people ask me like, hey man, you look like you always build relationships with other people. And I'm like, and they're like, how? And they're like, do you know how to chit chat really well? I'm like, I suck at chit chat. Like if we're only chit chatting, you're not going to be a good friend. Like we're not going to have a good relationship. But if we could have deeper conversations that obviously amps each other up in a good way, then that's where the relationship is really being built. And that's where, like, the more I talk about deep stuff that I care about, the more I know who I am as a person. I'm reinforcing my 4 Fs the more that you and I talk. And I'm re-identifying why those 4 Fs matter so much to me.
Yeah, I think what you covered really well, what you just said is, oh shoot, I just lost it. It just left. Building relationships, you're talking about, the sharing your struggles and wins. That is a great way to build relationships. And so you were talking when you're like, hey, Romi, how do you get to talk to people? Well, sometimes just telling them what you're going through. That's why sharing struggles is one of the easiest ways to build a relationship. Because most people are not going to. Now in the military, we see this a lot. We see new commanders come into a new office of airmen and go, "Hey guys, how's your day?" But the airmen are like, "Sir, you don't carry. Like, you're an officer. You're a lieutenant colonel. You're doing really well." But if they come in and go, "Hey, Airman John, man, I remember what it was like when I had to learn a new job. It sucked. I got in trouble. I didn't do well. I failed this." They're going to be like, "Oh, I can relate to that. I'm having a hard time now at this job. Hey, sir," then that's when the conversation and the juices flow. I challenge a lot of young officers in the military, when they go to meet airmen and get to know them, lead with a struggle. If you lead with a success story, they're probably just going to rub you off because they're like, "Oh, here comes the officer. He's great at everything, like he's a flyer or whatever." But if we, you build relationships through the struggle. And so it's a great way to start conversations. It's hard, definitely hard, right? As an ego person to lead with a struggle. But if I can go to an airman and go, "Hey man, I've gotten a DUI, man. It freaking sucked. It ruined my life for like 3 years. Like, my wife and I went through a lot." They're going to be like, "Oh, yeah, it okay." Like, "Oh, sir," like, it's, another way to end that was, dang, that was good.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lead with the struggle. And the struggle, well, also, people have a facade. The facade is built up by whether it's your title or whether it's the way that you're seen online or how someone, introduced you. And so I'll give you an example. There's a peer of mine. Actually, I'll change examples in case anyone listens. So I know someone who's a pretty senior level person, and the title that this person has, you're like, yeah, this guy's rolling in money or whatever. He's in charge of stuff. But then all of a sudden, in the last 3 big events that we were supposed to do something together, he's an hour or 2 hours late. Can't reach him on his phone. He shows up, and he doesn't explain why he was late. And everyone's like, "Dude, F that guy. He was supposed to be one of our leaders, but we can't trust him. Showed up late, can't communicate, and doesn't even tell us why he was late." Come to find out, on the side where I challenge that person, it's like, "Dude, what the hell happened, bro? Like I'm feeling some type of way because of all this." He's like, "Bro, my phone broke. I told our boss that my situation, so the boss knows, but it just wasn't passed on to the rest of the team. And so, oh yeah, by the way, all of my money was tied into my phone, and the only way to get access to my accounts from the ATM is through 2-factor authentication, which the app is on my phone. So I'm also broke right now. That's why I'm late to show up to stuff and to travel." And it's like, "Oh, bro, what can I do to help you, man? Why didn't you tell me before?" And before I found out about the struggle, I was like, "Man, this guy is effing up. Why is he on the team?" And then I learned about the struggle, and I'm like, "Dude, we're all fucking struggling, bro. And let me tell you what I'm going through." And now we have such a better collaborative interaction because we shared our struggles, and we're actually trying to help each other overcome those struggles. So I think not just sharing struggles is important, but sharing struggles and what we're trying to do to overcome those struggles is just as important.
Well, it's that time. What book do you got for the masses today?
I would say it kind of depends what you're trying to do. If you are just trying to figure out personally, there's 2 books: Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, or Jordan Peterson, Crap, I'm gonna mess up it's the white one, not the black one, the first one. 12 steps to mastering your
Okay.
12 principles of. Oh, I'm messing up the name. Let me pull it up.
12 rules of. Dang, I have it on my shelf. I haven't read it yet. That book's deep though, man.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna trust you to cut all this lame filler time that we have. Wow, my internet's loading slow now too.
There you go. I put a marker in to remind me if I do it or not. So
It's
I'll
all
throw
right.
mine
This is
in.
what keeps it raw, right?
I got The Art of Start 2.0, that book I was talking about.
Yeah.
Really good book. It's really easy to incorporate into starting a business, taking that aspect of it. So
I got you. Yeah, no, send me that book because I kind of want to read it. But the reason why I'm recommending those two books by Jocko Willink and Jordan Peterson is that Jocko Willink's The Extreme Ownership is just like it teaches you to stop trying to blame other people for your situation. It really just, for all intents and purposes, it says you are in control, and you need to understand that you're in control. And then Jordan Peterson's book, like you mentioned, it is a deep book. Took me a while. Like I had to put it away for half a year before I came back to it to finish it.
that's right.
But that book gave me more tactical stuff of how to be in control. So Jocko tells me I'm in control. Jordan tells me how I'm in control.
All right, y'all heard it. Just like I say every time, if you didn't take notes, it's on you because I have almost 2 pages of notes with markers of this podcast episode with some great tips and tricks. Any last parting shots before we end the show?
Man, I hope whatever you and I were talking about, it helps whoever's listening. If they're going through any kind of challenges, man, keep going. The only way you fail is if you stop. So keep trying and keep trying again and again.
There you go. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Until next episode, I bid you further ado. Romi, hold on for a little bit until I finish downloading.